When a region feels cheated by the central government, politics can move from negotiation to anger and sometimes to violent separatism. Decentralization sits in the middle of this story. On the one hand, it offers autonomy within the state. On the other, it can provide a platform for separatist mobilization. In these presentations, I ask whether decentralization encourages or discourages separatism, and I use Aceh in Indonesia to think through the conditions that really matter for peace and sustainable governance. Decentralization means transferring political, administrative, and fiscal powers from the central to subnational governments. In theory, this can reduce tensions by bringing decisions closer to citizens and allowing policies that reflect local needs and identities. However, Brancati cross-national studies finds that decentralization has ambiguous effects. It can reduce ethnic conflict by increased participation and giving regions a stake in the system. But it can also strengthen regional parties that push for secession. Its impact on separatism therefore depends on how is decided, which powers and revenues are transferred, and how accountable local institutions are. Decentralization can discourage separatism when it addresses both identity and economic grievances. If regions gain real control over language, culture, education, and local development, they can protect their identity without leaving the state. Fair and predictable sharing of resource revenues gives citizens a visible stake in staying. When people see that part of the oil, gas, or mining revenue is clearly reinvested locally, autonomy inside the state becomes a credible alternative for independence. Under these conditions, decentralization becomes part of a broader power sharing and multi-level governance arrangement rather than a step towards breakup. Aceh in Indonesia provides a concrete illustration. After nearly 30 years of conflict between the Free Aceh movement and the Indonesian state, a peace agreement in 2005 granted Aceh special autonomy. Laws adopted after the agreement allowed Aceh to retain a much larger share of revenues from oil, gas, and other natural resources, and to form local political parties that could compete in provincial elections. Former rebels moved into provincial politics. Large-scale violence declined, and Aceh remained within Indonesia. Special autonomy in Aceh shows how decentralization can be used to transform an armed separatist conflict into a negotiated framework for self-government. At the same time, Aceh also reveals the limits of decentralization. Studies of Aceh's public finance argue that despite higher transfers and resource revenues, poverty and governance challenges persist, partly because local elites have captured state resources and accountability remains weak. Some proof feels that promised autonomy has not fully translated into better services or more inclusive development. The lessons of that decentralization is not a magic cure. It is more likely to discourage separatism when it is part of a credible peace or constitutional settlement, when powers and revenues are substantial and stable, and when there are strong mechanisms of local accountability and participation. It should also support sustainable management of land and natural resources. Otherwise, autonomy can create a new layer of disappointed citizens and empowered elites, and separatist grievances may reach emerge in other form.